Video clip, I want to talk about decision making and failure. Decision making and failure. And one of the things that surprises a lot of people that work with me is how quickly I make decisions, even what most people would perceive as being big decisions, and how I will often make a very big decision very quickly and just move on with it and implement it immediately. And so, why is it? Why is it? And this is very complicit with how I've seen other people that are in some objective ways, successful in whatever they do, make very quick decisions. And there's very specific and real reasons for that. So let's talk about that. You will know already that most people are amazing at dreaming. They dream about winning the lottery at the very base level. They dream about whatever. They're very good about, dreaming some reality that's better than the reality they're currently in. Everybody has that. And then the next step you see is some people are very good at planning. They can plan all these different things, and yet very few people, like 1% maybe, are good at consistently executing in order to actualize or to will their goal or to achieve whatever it is that they were dreaming or they were planning. And so most of the time is spent in dreaming and planning. Why is it spent in dreaming and planning when obviously the objective way to achieve whatever it is you're out to achieve is not in dreaming and planning, it's in executing, of course. And the reason is that people use planning as an excuse in order to not have to confront themselves. That's the reason, okay? The way it works is, planning doesn't include any failure, because planning and dreaming are kind of the same thing. You can plan forever and you can create all scenarios, but most people that even plan, they're still planning way more optimistically than the reality that's going to happen. And they lie to themselves and convince themselves that that will be the reality, when the reality is in fact not going to be that optimistic. But when you have to execute, that's when you confront failure. And people delay the confrontation of failure. Most of the time, they infinitely delay it because they don't trust themselves and how they will react when they are confronted with failure. They don't trust themselves and how they will react when they are confronted with failure, so that they delay failure simply by planning, which looks like a noble activity, but it's not a noble activity. It's just another activity. It's just another way of procrastinating in order not to have to face yourself when you face failure. And for that reason, most people never learn how to face failure, and for that reason, they don't succeed. And so, what's the point? Well, it's really simple. You have to fail, and you have to fail really big. And in order to fail, you have to act. And so people say, why are you making decisions so quickly? Very simply, because I expect that it'll fail. And I'm making a decision at a level where I'm comfortable with the worst case scenario of the failure. I expect it to fail. But I also expect to look inwardly when it fails, in order to figure out why it failed and then iterate in order to make it more successful. There's a great book about it. It's called Black Box Thinking. Check it out, Black Box Thinking. So why make a quick decision? Because I know that I can't plan for all of the scenarios that are going to happen. And my act of making a decision is not an act of confidence in the success of the decision. It's quite different. It's, number one, the comfort of what happens in the worst case scenario. So I'm comfortable with the ultimate loss in that scenario, number one. And number two, why make a quick decision? Because I expect to fail and to learn from that failure. That's the only way that it's going to be a learned thing. And number three, and the biggest one of all, is the problem with action is not lack of planning. It's lack of commitment. Okay, because planning is fun and exciting, so is dreaming. Acting is not always fun and exciting. And commitment, what is commitment if not, as I heard it said once or twice, following through on the thing you said you were going to do long after the initial excitement of saying that thing has worn off. And so most failure happens in the execution not because the planning was poor, because you can't plan for all the real life scenarios, but because the commitment level was not matching the level of difficulty in executing on the task. So there you go. That's why you make quick decisions, because those decisions are made in light of what's the worst that can happen, number one. Number two, failure is going to happen, and you have to confront it sooner or later, and the more you delay it, the harder it's going to be to overcome it. And number three, the failure is not a lack of planning. It's a lack of execution, which you improve through iteration. And the lack of an ultimate successful project is simply a failure of commitment to follow through long after the initial excitement of the planning has worn off. So make fast decisions.